Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Bison Video Blog. Along with Jeff Kolpack, I'm Izzo. It's always a better blog when I'm over my right shoulder after a successful week in the Pick'em. The Big South betrayed you again. You picked against Liberty.
Just because you want to be the commissioner of the Big South.
That's 2 times, by the way, you've been betrayed by the Flames this year, because I got you on Montana, I got you on Georgia State. And, by the way, some Bison fans will probably want to have a piece of your mind after you picked the Jacks to win on Saturday, so... You got some explaining to do.
You're just a double-edged sword right now. I picked the Jacks to win because, well, somebody had to once in a while.
So that means maybe one of us will pick Northern Iowa this weekend.
Perhaps.
We'll find out. Here we go, Jeffrey. It's Northern Iowa week. This has become the rivalry, as I mentioned at the end of the post-game show on Saturday, going back to when NDSU joined the league in 2008 and were picked to win it their first year in it. Northern Iowa, of course, took umbrage to that, and the Panthers won the first 3 games. Let's describe this 2015 team, though. Playing with 2 quarterbacks is Mark Farley and Aaron Bailey and Sawyer Cole-Morgan. By far, in my mind, they had the hardest schedule in North America to start the first 5 games of the year.
Well, it's no doubt just at Iowa State and playing at Cal Poly and at Illinois State. That's just...
To throw in Eastern Washington in there, too.
Just for good measure at home. Here's one of their rare home games, but... Here's the thing about Northern Iowa that's different from last year, and it's the quarterback play right there. We're talking about 15, Aaron Bailey. He's completing 40 of 74 passes, and that's only 54%. Granted, he's a pretty good runner there, as you can see. But Sawyer Cole-Morgan, his backup, you know, he's throwing for 51% completion rate at 21 of 41. That's not going to get it done in the Valley or anything. And, you know, you got to look out for the rollouts and things like this, but I think NDSU, if they stop the run against Northern Iowa, that's going to be tough for the Panthers.
Well, here's the biggest thing, too, and that's number 7 is not back there anymore, and that's David Johnson, who gave all teams fits, and now he's doing it in the NFL with the Arizona Cardinals, but especially he did it to North Dakota State over the last 3 years.
Right, and their guys they have now, they're trying to rotate, I think, a couple backs into the rushing mix. You know, Bailey's their leading rusher, by the way, with 285 yards. Tyvis Smith is averaging 4.6 a carry. Darian Miller, 5 yards a carry, but they haven't been damaging at all.
And Miller who scored a touchdown against NDSU last year. The other thing on defense, and this is something you've harped on me since the preseason, is big Xavier Williams is not there anymore in the middle. I will say, though, their corners and their secondary, Tim Kilfoy is the one with a big interception return against Carson Wentz last year. DeAndre Hall, I think, is really good. If he's not at C.J. Smith's level, he's right underneath him. Their secondary is very good.
You know, you talked to the Bison offensive coaches last year, and they always pointed to Xavier Williams as the guy that made it to the goal. He was the big nose guard, and he was tough to move, 300-plus pounds. I don't know why he's not playing on Sundays, by the way. I thought he was really good. But without him, I think it's a different defense.
2-2 to start the year, and you mentioned it, at Iowa State, home for Eastern Washington, at Cal Poly, at Illinois State, and now at NDSU. Obviously, they did not play the way they hoped at Iowa State. Had 2 nice wins against Big Sky schools, and we thought those were pick'em games. I mean, they were down in the Eastern Washington game, and Cooper Kupp got hurt. Who knows how that game could have ended, but they dominated on the road at Cal Poly.
Cal Poly is a tough place to play. You know, we said it again, preparing for that triple option, but Cal Poly hasn't exactly come forward and played really well either. And
Illinois State last week, now the Northern Iowa offense did not play well, and you got to credit Illinois State's defense for that, and also the fact that Trey Roberson wasn't quarterbacking, quote-unquote, because he didn't throw the football on Saturday. That makes you wonder what to expect out of UNI heading into this game.
Well, and I think Illinois State threw a little surprise at him, and we don't know the Roberson injury, but he didn't throw a pass, so obviously something to do with his hand or something, who knows, but I thought we watched that game on the way down, and Northern Iowa looked okay, but I think you hit it right on the head. They don't have that David Johnson home run hitter right now.
The rivalry of this series can go back. I have 5 memories for you.
5? Is that it?
Well, just to come to the top of my mind. You have the punch, the 2009 game at the Fargo Dome. The 10 sacks game, the 2010 Bison loss at Northern Iowa. The strip and the fumble, that was Travis Beck and Kyle Emanuel in the first Bison win over UNI when they were redshirt freshmen in 2011. The 4th down in 2013 when NDSU went for it. Then Brock Jensen hit Zach Vraw for a touchdown. Eventually they came back and win the game. And then last year with the rout, and I don't know if anybody saw that coming. Not the fact that UNI would win, but win by 20 points last year. That was a dominant win for Northern Iowa.
Well, let's talk about the rout, and let's talk about, okay, what's different from this game as we see last year as they come out of the garage, which, by the way, is I thought one of the top 5 entrances.
Pretty good.
NDSU has the #1, but UNI is pretty good. What happened here? Well, the Bison defense here forces a fumble, but the big deal was offense, and the big deal was Carson Wentz, number 11. He was not full strength. I mean, he didn't even get into that throw at all. No. He threw it on his back foot. That was a big interception. But the fact Carson and that sprained ankle could not run, I mean, you're left with doing the jet sweep, and he didn't have that quarterback run game up the middle. But you have it now because Carson is 100%.
I will say this. The Bison defense did everything they possibly could to keep NDSU in that football game. This was the one highlight of the game was a C.J. Smith return, and they still couldn't punch it in. They had to settle for a field goal off of that drive.
And you knew things were going to be a tough deal there. But here was, there was some wide open gaps there for UNI. The fans stormed the field.
That? Now, that's the thing that we talked about after the game that rose some eyebrows that you never know what's going to happen, and we'll talk about ESPN coming in a second. But the last 2 times that NDSU has lost, the fans will storm the field. It happened in Montana back in August, and it happened last year in Cedar Falls.
I guess it shows you that this program gets everybody's good shot, and it has the attention of the students, which, you talk about FCS, and sometimes you wonder about the student interest in these games and knowledge. Well, in those 2 cases, they knew who was in town.
You're not surprised at all how this has taken off, are you? That they recruit for the same players. Obviously, now the head coach of the Bison used to coach for Northern Iowa, and he went to school and played at Northern Iowa. That this has blown up to become, it's the game. It's the game that everyone circles on the calendar.
And it's just a natural, I think, you take away the coaching personalities aside, but I think the biggest thing, and you hit it on the head, is the recruiting of players, because the winner of the Twin Cities battle between Northern Iowa and NDSU
has won the football game.
Has won the game, and we've seen that over the last several years.
I find it interesting. NDSU's going more into Iowa now. Lance Dunn is a Waterloo, Iowa kid, same hometown as Chris Kleiman, and he's playing. He'll play a lot on Saturday for NDSU, a guy that Northern Iowa heavily wanted. The class of 2016 has 3 or 4 guys from Iowa already. So they're going right into UNI's backyard and getting guys.
Well, why? Because Chris Kleiman is from the Cedar Valley area.
And Matt Entz as well.
Right. Yeah. So you have the connections there. I think it's further evidence that you don't have to go to Texas like they did in the transition to get good players.
We found out yesterday that ESPN will be coming back to Fargo, not for College Game Day, but for SportsCenter on the Road. That's the show that airs before game day from 6 to 8 a.m. We're hearing tentatively that the show is going to be inside the Fargo Dome. We're not sure where yet. I'm contemplating, I think, the 50-yard line. That's where they did a couple weeks ago when they were at St. John's for the St. John's and St. Thomas game. This is another huge opportunity for North Dakota State to get on national television. It's not game day, but it's still pretty good.
Do you think we can use their set for our pregame show?
I wonder if one of the anchors come by and be one of our guests on the show. That's what I was kind of hoping for.
Well, I got some good stuff in store, too, for the pregame show.
Well, it's homecoming, so I have no doubt about that. But how big a deal is this to get on ESPN again? It's not game day, but I mentioned it's still pretty good.
Anytime you have those 4 letters, ESPN, I think, associated with coverage of your team is a big deal. Just the SportsCenter name is just synonymous. It's so synonymous with college football and athletics in general that anytime you get the red truck coming in, you got to like it.
It's going to be crazy, I think. They're going to be live on Friday as well before the game gets ready to go on Saturday.
How many students will show up, though, if it's in the dome?
I'm telling you, if it's open and free, which they're claiming it will be, I think there'll be plenty there.
What they have to do is they have to do what they did for game day last year beforehand, is make it into that Danceteria dance party with the. I mean, they were jamming it when we got there at 5 in the morning.
Rocking and rolling. Yes, you're right. The atmosphere has to be there, and maybe
you just can't show up and the cameras go on. It's not an American Bandstand anymore.
The other games, that's a good reference, American Bandstand. You're getting into our older viewers there. Other games this week in the Valley have USD at Western, which now, as you look at the nice win that Western had at home over Southern Illinois, Illinois State at Youngstown. That's right next to this game. That's a massive game in the Valley to see if the Fighting Pellinis are ready for whatever Trey Roberson and Illinois State are going to throw at them.
Again, NDSU and Illinois State, the top 2 are hitting the heavy hitters right away.
Indiana State goes to South Dakota State. How about that for the Jacks? Is that a must-win in week 2 of conference play? Or is it too early?
Well, it's at home. South Dakota State's at home, and perhaps, but I can't say it. It's too early. I just can't say a must-win.
Indiana State, though, I know it was against Missouri State. They scored 56 on the road last week. So the Sycamore offense was certainly dialed in. And then Mo State at Southern Illinois. What about the Salukis right now after losing at home or on the road?
Another 1-point loss. It's. I think they're done. I think they're out of it.
Really?
Yeah. Too many non-conference losses. You lose to Southeast Missouri State. I just don't see them making the long road back.
That's tough already. We got a huge week of coverage planned for Northern Iowa and North Dakota State. A reminder, Kolpack and Izzo will be live either inside or outside the Dome. We haven't finalized that. We will be live from 9 to 11, and the Bison pregame show as well. Look for stories from Jeff on Inform.com and on the forum as well, and from us on WDAY coming up all week long. It's UNI and NDSU on homecoming coming up on Saturday.